This is Richard Wolff responding to another AskProfWolff question from our Patreon community. Excuse me. This question comes from Paula Brighton, and it asks me to talk about the impact on our society of the transition from pensions that used to be provided to a large percentage of our workforce over onto 401k plans, the alternative to an employer-sponsored pension that consists basically of setting up a special account, the 401k, and then using the money you set aside or that your employer sets aside out of your weekly paycheck to put money into that account and then to use it basically to play the stock market, to buy shares, to trade them, to hold them, the usual things people do who invest. You become a small, self-interested investor rather than relying on the private employer to take a portion of money and use it in a very conservative way, taking minimum or no risk, rather like the federal government does with what it withholds from our check for Social Security. So many workers had the good situation that when they reached retirement age, they would get both a secure pension from their employer and their Social Security, and together those could make at least a profoundly useful contribution to their retirement, the retirement period of their lives. Employers didn't want this. Particularly because most of these pensions, up until a couple of decades ago, were what we call defined benefit pensions. Here's what it meant. The employer committed to you, the worker, that you would get a certain benefit when you reached retirement age. That would be the money paid out to you every month for the rest of your life. And you knew what the benefit was. And this was important to workers because remember, a pension is something negotiated by the employer with the employees. If the employees are unionized, then it is a formal negotiation with a contract. This is important to understand because what employers did when they were either forced by a strike or some other union action, or let's call it incentivized to keep their relationships with their workers in good form, they gave a pension. When they gave a pension to their workers, they explained, so that nobody would be misunderstanding, that this is a benefit, and we're giving you this instead of, for example, a wage increase, or more vacation days, or a medical insurance program, or time off for lunch. In other words, it was part of what workers negotiated with their employers. The difference was they were themselves paying for it, because the employer really was only collecting what the workers and the employers had agreed to. And the employers liked offering pensions because that was money you would give to the worker later. Meanwhile, you could do things with that pension money, and you had the benefit that by giving the workers a pension, you could get away with giving them less of a wage increase than you might otherwise have had to give them because the pension was a benefit. Very important to understand. Employers didn't like this. Why? Well, first of all, they didn't like that they had the risk. If for some reason economic situation was poor when workers reached age 65, the employer still had to make good what the benefit was that they had negotiated 5, 10, 20 years earlier. Didn't want that. Didn't want to have that obligation. So they pressed to go the following route. No more defined benefit pension. Now we get a defined contribution pension. What that means is the employer takes a certain amount of money out of your weekly check for your pension. but he doesn't guarantee what the benefit will be. That money will be invested, hopefully successfully, hopefully profitably, so that the money is there when you need it, when you retire. But if it isn't, you're the one taking the risk, not the employer. If it goes down, there's less to be given to the pensioners. The risk shifts. 401k takes it even further. The employer is now out of the picture. All he does is take money out of your account and stick it into your 401. Takes it out of your wage, as agreed, and puts it in your 401. You run the 401. You make the decisions, or you hand it over to a professional who charges you for doing it. And however well you or the professional do will determine the value of your pension. It makes your pension less secure. It makes your pension less safe. It makes your pension much less guaranteed than they once were. And it puts the risk of it all on you. And what is the impact? Well, you're seeing it right now. If you had the bad misfortune to reach retirement age now or in the recent past, the value of the pension, the 401k you have, crashed in March and April of 2020. It's unclear whether it will recover, when it will recover, or how much it will recover. Many pensions in the United States and many 401ks are worth less today than they were 3 months ago. In many cases, much less. So you will have to retire having taken the risk and having the misfortune to have that risk come due at a time of stock market collapse. This in other countries is not done anything like it is done in the United States, because working people mostly want the security of a pension that's there and adequate for a decent life. They don't want to play the stock market and make their retirement a gamble. It's a bad thing that happened here. It could have and should have been fought, and it should be over rather sooner than later. This is Richard Wolff for AskProfWolff, engaging with our Patreon community, and glad to do so.